So you've just completed your download of Project Motor Racing. You want to jump into the career and give yourself a little bit of a challenge. You don't want to start with 2 million or 650,000. You start with the lowest, 100k. That gives you two options. You have this, the 1990 Porsche 911 Carrera Cup, the 964, or you've got the Mazda MX-5 from 2017. But which one do you choose? Which one do you go with? Do you choose the Porsche that I'm currently driving, which has 194 kilowatts of power, 310 new meters of torque, weighs in at 1,120 kilos, and has a 3.6 litre flat six engine? Or do you go with this 2017 Mazda MX-5 Trophy Edition? This comes in with 134 kilowatts of power, has 204 newton meters of torque, weighs in at 1,120 kilos, and has a 2-litre L4 engine. Both are pretty standard, both are fairly slow and easy to control. However, there are some things that you need to take into account when choosing which car to use. This video is going to give you the pros and cons of both, and then I will give you my opinion as to which is the best one to start your career with out of the two. This is, of course, taking into account the absolute god-awful AI that they still have in the game at this moment. And this guide may change in the future when the AI is finally sorted out and you can actually drive freely as you would normally. So, buckle up and try not to spin out as we give you the best car to start this game with. So, which out of the Porsche or the MX-5 do you choose? Number of factors to this, namely cost, as well as tournament winnings and racetracks that you're going to be going against. So, first off, immediately, the Porsche 964 is a hell of a lot cheaper than the Mazda MX-5. This is very important to note because that difference in cost is going to be what allows you to enter more competitions. So you save yourself around 10 grand by going with the Porsche. Other things to take into account is the way that it handles. The Porsche is much more powerful and does have a much higher top speed, but it's also a much larger vehicle. And that plays a huge part when you're going against the AI in its current state. Smaller vehicles means it's easier to pass on certain tracks. I've had most success on the UK tournaments that they do, but we'll go into those in a second. But generally speaking, especially on narrow tracks, the Mazda is going to win here. So you've got to decide whether you feel that you can get past the AI with a larger car for cheaper, or whether you want to take the more expensive, slower, but smaller car in the Mazda. The other thing to take into account here are the tournaments that become available once you pick your car. Now, I would quite like it if there were more tournaments and if there were more things available to us, for example, having just more starter cars. But you get the Historic Porsche Challenge North America, Historic Porsche Challenge Germany, and the Historic Porsche Challenge UK. Now, you have different varying amounts of entry fees here, especially if you've got travel costs. So, depending on where you start, it will be cheaper or more expensive to go to these locations. So, it's 17 grand to enter the North America. It is 30 grand to enter the German challenge, and it's 14,000 to enter the UK if you start in America. These values do change if you start in Europe, and it becomes much cheaper to enter both of these two. However, the prize pool doesn't change. So it's 150 grand up for grabs in the UK challenge, it's 300,000 in the German challenge, and it is 433,000 in the North America challenge. What's important to note is that this purse is a lot less because these courses are a lot easier to learn. Although, granted, Donington or Derby in the game is a bit of a nightmare to get to grips with. You get around 6,000 per win, and then it's usually between 30 and 40,000 for a win of the series as an extra bonus in the Porsche. What's interesting about that is that the laps are more, there are more cars in each event of the Porsche than the MX-5. In regards to the MX-5, you get the UK MX-5 trophy. You get the US MX-5 Trophy South and the US MX Trophy North. Now, these price pools tend to be a little bit more worthwhile. It's 201,000 for the UK, 145,000 for the US South, and 145,000 for the US North. 10,000, 10,000, and 13,000. Again, if you start in Europe, the UK trophy becomes a lot cheaper to enter, but it is still the same price pool. So you end up earning more money in the Mazda than what you do in the Porsche. So even though you've got a higher upfront cost, you have a much lower barrier to entry and a much easier time of winning the races. They have less laps and less competition. You only get 12 people as opposed to 16, 8 laps instead of 12 on the actual race. And the races do pay a hell of a lot more. I think you get around 20,000 for the UK trophy if you play with the MX-5, which is insane. So realistically, then, the Mazda kind of wins this in every sense of the word, except, of course, where it counts. Economically, the amount of money you can win, the ease of access and accessibility into races, the Mazda does kind of top out. However, in my opinion, the Porsche is more fun to drive. And again, this showcases why the game's AI is really letting the game down as a whole. Because if I was to just want to play in the car that gives me the most joy, then the Porsche wins it. It's cheaper, it's economically more viable. It might be a bit harder to win on, for example, because of the AI and the way that it's working, but it handles so much nicer. It's a much nicer car to actually sit and drive. The Mazda is a bit wishy-washy. It's a bit all over the place. It needs the tires to get warm before it's actually any good. Whereas the Porsche is pretty much good to go straight out the pits. I've got better times with the Porsche. I've had fewer crashes with the Porsche, but I cannot win as easily with the Porsche as I can in the Mazda because I just can't get by the opposition with the cars being much wider and larger in general. If and when they sort the AI out, I would probably say that that will change. But for now, it depends what you want from the career mode. If you want actual progression where you're not just going to waste money on repairs, then go with the Mazda. It will be a much easier time for you. It will be, as a result, allow you to get to the GT4s and GTOs and stuff much, much quicker and much more efficiently. If you want a race where you're just going to have a lot of fun, then play with the Porsche. It will be incredibly frustrating, don't get me wrong, because the AI will lead to that. But the Porsche is just a better driving car, in my opinion. It just handles so much better. Let me know in those comments down below what you think. Let me know if this is true for you, or if you actually find that you prefer the MX-5 to the Porsche. And I will see you all in the next video. Ciao, ciao.